Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Mike Pelaia.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Steel Nation Radio, brought to you by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm Mike Pelaia of Steel Nation Association, where we cover the Steelers 24/7 while bringing you, the Steeler fans, together in an effort to raise money for Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. And I'm excited to say that today I am joined by a special guest, former NFL player, former power agent, author of the book NFL Brawler, with another one coming out soon, Ralph Cindrich. How you doing tonight, Ralph?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me on, Mike.
Thank you for giving us the time. Before we get into some of the stuff that I want to talk to you about in terms of agents and players, and this is kind of the time of year where all the off-season moves are taking place, I just wanted to find out kind of how you got into the whole NFL experience from a player to an agent and then some, and then what you're doing now.
Sure. Well, thank you for asking. It was playing with the Houston Oilers when I would have guys ask me questions. I was going to law school while I was with the Oilers, and of course I would answer, and the guys always appreciated the price because I didn't charge anything. But they started to realize that I was capable of understanding the problems from their perspective and from a professional side, legally and otherwise. And so I started at that time with a little bit of marketing with one or two guys, and one was Hall of Fame teammate Curly Culp, who I just did a little bit of marketing for, not much, but it was enough to get me into it. And I came back to Pittsburgh from once I graduated from law school after we had our first child, and started representing players in Pittsburgh. And one of my first top guys was Mark May. That was in 1981 from the University of Pittsburgh, first round draft choice, Outland Trophy winner. And from there it started on, and Pitt was very good to me at the beginning. It really helped me get started.
Awesome. It sounds like we know the story from there. A very good and established career transpired. So a lot of stories that I'm sure are in the book NFL Brawler, which we can find NFLBrawler.com, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
It'll be NFL Brawler, BRAWLER.com, and it's also on Amazon. It's the easiest way to get the book if you're interested in it. It's an insight into what goes on in negotiations, workouts, everything that's taking place right now, with prime examples, documented top draft choices from Bill Frelick, who was the second pick in the draft, to Paul Gruber, fifth pick, and so on. Several guys in the top 10, and really just their stories and what happens pre-draft, and then some of the games that go on, and certainly once you get into contract negotiations. And, a lot of that has changed right now. And I'm talking about the contract negotiations because much of it is already set in stone. So the need for an agent has been diminished tremendously, and that has been the aim of the NFL Players Association, because really the agents are the only group that threatens their existence out there. And in terms of associations and unions, the NFLPA is one of the worst.
And that goes into something I was going to talk to you about. So, with the slotted spots for pay right now with the draft picks, when do agents begin to work with these kids as they're coming out of college? Or I've heard of some, I think it's the kid out of Louisville, Lamar Jackson, I believe, who's not, his mom is his agent for this first contract. So
yeah, and that's dumb. I don't care if it is set. You still need someone advising you as to the process from the get-go. When you go into the NFL Combine, it's an interview. It's a business interview, and you have to know what to say. You have to dress properly. I mean, do you have clowns that go in and still work out okay? Sure, you can roll the dice in anything and still come out on top. But if you want to be smart, if you want to be a professional and have a long-term career, you get with the right person. You're going to, when you retire, you're going to have money and a lot going for you. You're going to be able to go on to other careers. And, I have umpteen examples of that. Even this past year, several guys who, Frank Wright, who's going to be head coach of the Colts, and Scott Frost, who's going with Nebraska, and there are several others. And it's just, you need to know football, counsel guys properly, and when you get into this whole relationship, it's a business one with the NFL, and if you're not smart, you're going to get taken advantage of. You listen to the wrong people, you get behind with Uncle Sam. Any number of things happen to where it's just totally unnecessary. Now, some guys are going to get in trouble no matter what. They're not going to listen to anyone. But if you have good guys, you have to be able to counsel them properly, and you have to have a lineup of professionals in each of the areas of expertise. I didn't do the taxes. I didn't do the investments. I didn't do the marketing. I set up a lot of these things with good people, good professionals that you would go to if you went to a law firm downtown Pittsburgh or to a marketing firm in New York or wherever.
Absolutely. I agree. I personally would not want to be going at it without a professional on my side, that's for sure. And we always hear the NFL is a business, and I'm sure that you can speak to it more than most, that's a very accurate statement. And if you don't know the business, you're going to get taken advantage of, I'm sure.
No question.
So, as we kind of talk about the rookies transitioning into the NFL and the combine just occurred, are agents at the combine, and if you've already signed with an agent, do you bring them there, or are agents there to scout players as well to try to recruit them to their agency, or how does that work?
It's pretty much locked up. What happens now, technically, a guy is a student athlete and an amateur until he declares after his junior season, and he declares, or after his senior season. He is not supposed to have even contact in many jurisdictions with agents, which is just simply the result of the greed of the NCAA, along with the football in the NCAA, and getting together. And basketball has just been exposed, but trying to limit or keep the exclusive rights of the NCAA totally to itself, without regard to the players and what's going on with them. So, they're amateurs in a legal sense, but we all know you could take judicial notice of the fact that most college players going to big-time schools who are big-time prospects are paid big-time dollars by the alumni, by the other groups out there. So it's really a fraud on the public. Basketball is exposing it, and some people are raising their eyebrows. And as I say, you can take judicial notice of the fact in court that amateur NCAA players are paid across the board.
That sounds like something that we're learning now, for sure, right?
Yes, and they are. So that process goes. The almost legitimate way, always in the past years, was to send out a notice to players. You would find out who were top prospects through, and by the way, the book I have coming out is going to address all of this, but you would find out through the National Scouting Combine, which is a organization made up of the NFL teams who pay for information on all the top prospects coming out. That's one, and that's the biggest one. The other one is Blesto, and Blesto was like the Bears and the Lions and the Eagles and the Steelers, and so it was a much smaller group. And Jack Butler here in Pittsburgh, I apologize for the noise in the background. I'm in Pacific Beach, California, but Jack Butler, the noted Pittsburgh scout and director, was the head of Blesto, and it is really, and was one of, I think, the most respected. Tom Modrak, formerly of the Steelers, has most recently been with Blesto. So those are these scouting organizations that the NFL teams rely upon only for height, weight, speed, and there's a numerical grade that goes on the players put on by the scouts. In this National Scouting Combine, the higher the grade, the better the player. The highest grade I ever saw was Bo Jackson. It was like a 9.0, and so and then Blesto, the lower the grade, the better the player, or the better he's rated as a prospect. Now, you take into consideration, there's a small group of men studying all these players out there, so it's difficult to really put a good grade on these guys, but it's at least something for all the scouts to start with.
All right, that makes sense. So,
Yes.
kind of ending this rookie theme and moving into, some of the more established veterans, especially now. We kind of talked about the slotted pay through the draft picks. How different are the negotiations when you start talking about a second and third contract if they're fortunate enough to get there? I'm sure they're vastly different because now you've got 3, 4, 5 years of film on these players.
Yes.
I'm sure you use that when you go into those negotiations. How different is that negotiation when you're talking with general management and ownership, the second and third?
It's a world of difference if a guy is a free agent. I mean, you have everything going for you. If he has a tag put on him, and there are two different tags. One is a franchise tag where the player is just locked up exclusively to the team. He gets paid a certain amount of money, which is the top 5 averages, or the average of the top 5 highest paid players at his position. And then you have right of first refusal on another group of guys. But for the most part, you hit the free agent market. You get all the teams look at the player, and they're going to be out there bidding. You can create a lot of leverage that way. So you have really a good situation going on the player's behalf. And of course, unlike just a draft where you're locked in totally to one team.
So you mentioned the tags, and this was something I kind of had a question on. Is there an advantage for the player to get tagged? I know it's a top 5 guaranteed salary for a year, but
Let me cut it short. No, because that guy in the open market has so many people bidding on him. This one team is holding him back. So, I mean, I had a case with one player. It was a landmark case with Will Wooford of the Indianapolis Colts, where I put in a provision, and they've outlawed it since, and the NFL sued me over it at one time, but I put a provision in his contract when he was an offensive tackle that he would be the highest paid player on the team. Well, the Indianapolis Colts didn't like that, and of course, Buffalo, he was a free agent from Buffalo. They had Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith, and all those other ones. So he ended up with the Indianapolis Colts. But those were the games that you had to play to try to get a player away from a team that put a tag on him. There is no advantage to a player having a tag unless he's nicked in a bad way or there's something going on with him that no one knows about, and it puts his career in jeopardy. Otherwise, if you're young and healthy, and keep in mind the average lifespan is just a little under 4 years, like 3.6 years. So a lot of these guys are going through for one contract. The better players, they're going to go through for 2 or 3, and it's the agent's duty to try to make sure that he has his player become available at a time when he can maximize his free agent leverage. So, if the first contract is 4 years, the second, if he after 4 years, or if he's a higher draft choice after 5 years, he's locked into the team. But then when he becomes a free agent, he gets a chance to be able to look around. He has to see, is he really at his premium? If he is, you lock him in for a long period of time, because the bonus is the only thing really guaranteed for the most part. So you want to get a high signing bonus, and that's based upon the number of years. If he's in a so-so position, you drop down maybe to 2 years or even 1 year if he was injured, and then be able to come back. So you prime the player for free agency, making sure that he's not looking ahead, and it's incumbent on the player, not to me. There are some agents that are just knuckleheads. You don't talk contract dollars and everything else with players while he's playing and going out on the field. You just don't do it. I don't care who you are. Every player I've ever been around, you put dollars in his mind, that's all he starts thinking about, and he starts to become more tentative on the field.
So that's actually right down an alley I wanted to ask you about. So what type of conversations, if any, do you have with a player entering the free agent year before that season is played? Is there anything that you specifically talk about, or is it business as usual? Go out there, perform, do your job, and we'll catch up after the season ends?
Look, that's always the case. The good players, the big time players, they're good leaders. They're good politicians. They do the right things for the team. They're smart in the locker room. Now, if you're of an exceptional talent, you can be like LeVon Bell or whomever out there. You can be a little contrary and all the rest. But otherwise, the great players that I've been around who are in the Hall of Fame, they were diplomats in the locker room. They were team leaders. I sat by and I saw it all the time. Curly Culp, Alvin Bethea. The leadership is exhibited there by their performance and what they do, and they're not moaners and complainers. And it's the reason why the Steelers too. You talk all the great players they had. The biggest, baddest guy on that team was the best leader, and that was Joe Green. And if you wanted to take on the leader, you had to take him on. I guarantee you, there wasn't anybody going to do that.
I think that's probably very true. I think that's very true.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. You get through the season, that you're a free agent. Now, the player comes to you as his agent. What kind of conversations do you have? Obviously, I'm sure, years to the contract, money, but also, family situations, cities, any type of preferences. Does that all go into your job as an agent to search out the best deal?
It does, but, you have to be smart as a football person first. It's not the highest number is not always the best number. Sometimes when you have success, and it's hard to find in the NFL, when you strike nice success and you leave it to go somewhere else for a few dollars more that maybe after taxes will mean absolutely nothing, then you're a knucklehead. You just don't do it. Success is hard to find in the NFL. When you find that team, you try to stick with it and let it go from there. Someone coming up in free agency, you got to tell them, and they have to know. They got to be smart. They got to stay away from the guys who are doing the wrong things. You can't afford to get into any trouble whatsoever. From that point on, it's all going to come down to what were how'd your film look this past year? How are the NFL clubs grading you, and what are their particular needs? And so that all comes into focus. But mostly, you tell the guy to relax. Let's see what's going on. You always want the home team in the game. If the home team, even if they want to be and can't be, you're always in a different situation. It can be good if you have a guy who has enough leverage to pull in 4 or 5 teams. But if you're out there and you're playing hardball and you only have 1 or 2 teams, there's a good chance you're going to come up short at the altar.
Sure. And how do you manage a player who might overvalue himself? It's your job to understand his value and to explain that, I'm sure. And look, this is what we see as the market value. This is what you're worth. This is what you're getting offered. And they think they should get a lot more. I mean, Le'Veon Bell is potentially a circumstance right now that I'm speaking of. How do you relay that conversation to the player to say, it's not 15, it's 12 million per year, or
Total pain in the butt. That's why when you go out and when you're doing your recruiting and everything else, it behooves you to represent, number 1, smart guys, but number 2, good guys. When I say smart guys that understand the realities that are out there, and most do. The other type are just ones to avoid. If I'm going in with that type of guy, I'm not going to connect with him. And it's going to end up being, with almost anyone, a fractured relationship because they're not going to get what they want. But honestly, I didn't have too many guys like that. I mean, I had guys where, and I think they knew. I mean, I'd go in, I'd talk with everyone, would make sure we had due diligence in every area, making sure. And you got to be smart. You got to talk with every club out there. You have to talk with the trainers or notify the trainers and see if there's any problem that wasn't disclosed. Combine, you got to be there and know everything that's going on, not only with the new guys coming out, but with the guys that are up as free agents. And that's where you get together with all of the NFL people and you find out what's going on. You smooth and it's a long, hard job. Sometimes you'll see the NFL people there, whether it's at the Senior Bowl or at the Combine, and it'll be 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they'll be sipping on that drink. And if you happen to get up and be up early at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, you'll see them there smoking a cigarette and drinking black coffee. I mean, it's just it's the life of the NFL coach and scout, and it's a hard one. But they do find out about the players. They get the information, and it comes down mostly to talent. They're looking for the guys who play the best.
Of course, that's what they're there for. That's what keeps their jobs, right?
Yes.
So, A couple more questions for you, just real quick, and I know we're coming up against time, but do you ever advise a player, now especially in this social media time frame, and maybe you didn't have to deal with it as much when you were doing this, but when they pop off on social media or they do something that just loses favor with the fans, what kind of advice can you give them as their agent other than, hey, shut up, stop, as Herm Edwards said, don't push send? What else can you tell them? I mean, is there anything you can do?
I never had many guys like that. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't appeal to them. They didn't appeal to me. And it was just one of those, because if a guy's serious about his career, he has to make sure that he has every area covered. And certainly nowadays, that's one big and very important area. And you just can't pop off that way, and it affects your career. What you want to do is, what are the leaders on your team doing? What are the guys who are successful, who have played a long time, who are making good money, who are part of the community? What are they doing? How are they conducting themselves? And if you can emulate those guys, you're going to be okay.
Absolutely. And one more, and then I'll let you run. Is there any story you can share about any negotiations with the Rooneys over the years? I know you've had a few. Anything you want to relay to the fans?
Yeah, there was one. There was one with Will Wooford where he was the highest paid player in the NFL, and I got to make sure I'm recollecting specifically. But I was dealing with the Steelers on a contract, and I was trying to get. It could have been Ferrier, but it was one of the guys, and I was trying to just get a little bit more. And when I came back to them, my client had already been in, and I had told him previously. I said, "Hold tight. We're at great numbers. This is where it is." And he was just ecstatic beyond belief. It was Damani Dawson. It was Damani Dawson when he on his free agent contract. But I said, Monty, and it was during the season, and he hadn't heard any numbers because, as I said to you, you don't talk numbers to a player during the season. This was at their break, and I said, Monty, just hold on. I said, we're some great numbers, but let me get a little bit more. I'm going to try to get this and that. I said, it's just topping on it all. And so he says, okay. So I go and I call the Steelers, Dan Ferentz. I couldn't reach him. Finally, he calls me back. I said, hey, Dan. I said, we're going to need a little bit more on this Damani Dawson contract. I don't know what we're going to be able to do here. He said, that's okay. He said, I just saw Damani in the hall, and he said, he just gave me a big bear hug and a kiss. And I said, really, huh? I said, how fast can you get those contracts over to me? So that was it. I mean, it's like, okay, the game was over. It's time to get those contracts signed. And that is something. When you reach an agreement with an NFL club, you keep your mouth shut. You don't go out there and say anything until you have signed papers in your hand, because there's been a lot of clubs that have pulled back out of embarrassment and other reasons, and because an agent had a big mouth and he wanted to get it out there too soon. So there are a lot of little games, and I'm only now coming up with a title for that book, but it covers everything from entering into the draft, preparation for it, contract negotiations, really every aspect of representing a professional athlete.
It sounds like it'll be a good read. And before that comes out, I'll remind everybody to also get NFL Brawler at nflbrawler.com, BRAWLER, or also on Amazon. And
yes.
And make sure you get that too. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Really appreciate it. Great conversation, and hope to have you on again sometime soon. We'll talk to you all next time.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.